Hi everyone, this is Sunit here for our hangout about redefining words. So from here we are progressing in our process of defining and purifying, then redefining, and finally into living words. Now, what I found interesting is even within myself and my personal life and my process through many years. Many of us kind of get the gist of what it means to define, redefine, and live words. But when you get into the details of the process that's really in fact involved, there's quite a bit. So in this hangout and possibly some hangouts to come, we're going to be walking through the process of, what it means to really redefine a word, but then also to understand that is it really about redefining the word, or is it about redefining self? And through redefining self, is it about redefining your everyday life experience? And not only your everyday life experience, but also your life in general, your relationships, moments in your day. There's so much to explore. Sorry, I had a moment there with the screen, but we're back on. So there's much to explore within this process of available on the Soul website. If you haven't listened to our previous video regarding purifying words, I would suggest having a listen to that, because this hangout is going to follow on that video about defining and purifying words. In the purifying words video, we walked a process with the word trust, purifying and defining the word trust, which is to essentially understand first and foremost who you are in relation to a word. It's quite fascinating how many words we take for granted within ourselves, our relationships, and our everyday lives. Let's maybe first start there. Let's start in our everyday life experiences, in moments in our relationships with other people, where in the previous video we walked through the word trust. And I shared here as well, I'm going to be sharing and walking my personal process in defining, redefining, and living words. Because as I've always learned, is that if you've walked your own story, your own process, it assists and supports so many others as well. Because other people then have more of a tangible, practical reference of what it is and what the experience really is when it comes to defining, redefining, and living words. So in the previous videos, we walked defining and purifying words. And here we specifically focused on the word trust and how I shared how to define the word trust, which is to essentially get to know and first ask the question, who I am as the word trust. What influence does the word trust have in my relationship with myself, other people, and my everyday life circumstances or decisions and choices that I face? So, I mean, this as well, I mean, me personally, this was a real gift in terms of, being able to kind of wake up and realize the extent to which words defined me and the extent to which I find videos. As to who am I as the word trust? Who am I as self-trust? I mean, it was like my whole mind froze when that question came to me, or when I asked myself that question, because, mostly within the process of defining trust, it was all about trusting other people and, all the conditions and rules and laws and things like that behind trusting other people. I did not have a definition within me of what it meant to trust myself. Like, what is self-trust to me? And within a little bit of what I mentioned in the previous video, and with regards to purifying words, is that it was extraordinarily eye-opening that I could define self-trust and trust for myself in such a way where it, from that moment, never became about trusting another person, but instead helping them and supporting them to develop trust and self-trust inside of themselves. So, there's always this saying about everything being in reverse, life being in reverse. And from a certain perspective, the little bit of insight that I found in my process with just having a look at the word trust and self-trust is that, I for so long defined the word trust and self-trust in others, meaning that if I put my trust in another person, only then I would trust myself. But at the same time, in those experiences, had faced a lot of, or many moments of betrayal and the opposite of trust, breaking the trust, breaking of relationships and things like that. Instead of, how my life is being lived right now, which interestingly enough has supported many long-term relationships where I've developed a redefinition of trust as self-trust within myself, in a way where I've realized that it's never actually been about only trusting other people. Like, really, I got to the moment within myself where I asked myself, but Sunette, how can you possibly know what trust is or what it means to trust another person if you do not yourself have a definition for you that you have lived, that you have proven to yourself as to what it means to trust you, what it means to live self-trust? So in a way, and this is in just more my personal view with regards to my relationship to trust and self-trust, which is that, we've all in different relationships, in so many different contexts, experienced the bad side of trust. The betrayal, the breaking of relationships, the gossiping of secrets and stuff like that. We've all been through that in some way or another, whether to a subtle degree or to an extensive degree. But within that, all those moments, all those people who have experienced the opposite of trust has led me to this moment in my life where trust to me right now is where I am assisting and supporting other people to develop self-trust, to develop trust within themselves, to develop trust within who they are in thought, word, and deed. I'm not yet in these hangouts or videos going to expand on what the nature of honestly, genuinely, really trusting another really is. That's a bit too much ahead within this process. So for now, I am going to assist and support each one of you listening to this hangout. And whether you're listening to it live or at some other given time, we know all our lives are ever so busy. So here I would like to show you the process of the first step that will empower you the most, the process of redefining a word first for yourself. Because the first and foremost important question that you've got to ask yourself is, how can I give something to someone else if I myself do not even know what it means yet? And it's like, in a way, as though, I mean, I call it life, you know, many different people can call it God, or just life force, or, you know, what is here in this existence. It's as though that something within ourselves and our lives have guided us to show us what something is not, so that we can find out what it is. So because it's interesting, like, for example, let's have a look at the defining and purifying process of the word trust, and what you may have written down and noted down if you're walking this process with us in these hangouts and videos, is you may have noted down and written down everything that trust is not. You know, like all the bad memories and emotions and experiences and conversations, and, you know, got to what comes up in yourself within the word trust. Very few of you have had a trust. Like, what is trust to me? What does it mean to myself in my relationship with my thoughts, my emotions, my own body, who I am in my everyday life, responsibilities, obligations, relationships with other people? None of us, or very few, has got that definition in our list when we defined or purified the word trust. It was the same with me. I mean, when I started walking my process, when it came to the word trust, I really mainly only had very bad memories, very not good experiences, because I defined my relationship to this word, my experience to this word, my process to this word, in everyone and everything else but me. So this is essentially the challenging process of redefining a word, because it's not only about redefining a word, it is mainly about redefining yourself and creating a new foundation, a new platform through definitions. You know, it's interesting, like, for example, let me put it to you this way, like how I've seen words is, to give a practical example, is again taking the word trust. So when I started my defining and purifying process of the word trust, and I started writing down the word trust to get to know myself as this word, it was like all my definitions and experiences and memories and references and connotations were like a building that was not standing firmly at all. Like the whole infrastructure of the building would just be able to collapse with like a gust of wind and just fall apart. Because whenever something happened in my relationship with someone else, you know, my whole trust foundation definition would fall apart, would break apart, would go to nothing. I mean, this may be something that many of you will be able to relate to, you know, that you've had such extreme moments or experiences with trust where you get to a point of, and forgive me for frankness, but, you know, you kind of get to a point where you're like, I'm not ever going to trust anyone ever again. And here comes my frankness. Fuck everyone. I have had enough. I will never trust again. And that's essentially where your foundation and infrastructure of the word trust had completely collapsed, fallen apart. But you know what's been interesting within my process of redefining the word trust, the word self-trust for myself, is that no matter what is being done unto me by anyone in my everyday life, trust in me and who I am and how I walk my path to be the best I can be, exalt worthy, learn from my mistakes that I can, and be a living, leading example of the potential that us people can be and become. That trust in me stands unwavering. And I'm going to essentially share, which is something you'll face as well, is that I've been through ups, and downs, downs, which is like reaching that deepest, darkest pit of your being, of your soul, of every fiber of yourself, where it feels like, you know, you almost don't want to continue anymore. I've been there a couple of times, not only once. And this definition and redefinition and living process of trust has seen me through the best and the worst of myself, which is also why we are so freshly starting with this word trust and self-trust, because in my personal process with myself and my life, what I have faced and gone through, these words have been my foundation, have been my pillars, have been my strength that has guided me through the best of me and the worst of me. And that's actually very specific that I speak those words. It's guided me through the best of me and the worst of me. We all actually in this life face the best version of ourselves and the worst versions of ourselves. The key is to actually make the best of ourselves even better, and the worst of ourselves into the best, and eventually the better. And this is also the heart of it, and this is to show you the key, the power, you can find for yourself, within yourself and your life. Defining them and living them. All right. So here, continuing with the word trust. So, you know, it was you will notice that maybe somewhere in your definition and clarifying of the word trust, there were some references of you being able to relate it to yourself. Like, I trust that my children, my parents, my friends, people in my life, I trust that I myself enough to be who I am, thought, word, and deed. And there I'm speaking in those lines of what it means to trust yourself, what it means to live self-trust. Very few has got that definition. Most of us, and that was including myself, have got definitions of trust and self-trust, which is really about everyone and everything else but ourselves, right? So here we're going to, in this hangout, and in the next one, I'll continue more with examples. Here, I'll also use more personal examples of is initially quite challenging because it's something that we've never done before. I mean, Hi, everyone. We've had a moment of technical difficulties, but we're back. So here we're going to continue with redefining words. And for now, I will, just getting all the questions back, the camera set, getting me in a real-time moment of defining myself, redefining and living, which is, I mean, even this very moment I can use as an example, which is where I, for a moment, and this is where I would like to assist and support everyone else to eventually get to, which is where, okay, a moment happened where we've had some technical difficulties and with the internet and within the given country that we are, and so many, unforeseen, unpredictable, unexpected things going to happen when it comes to the internet connection, because, I mean, this Hangout in itself is very much dependent on the internet, and the internet is dependent on so many other things. And but sometimes we can get into a moment of panic or stress or anxiety or fear, and because we're doing a live hangout with viewers and also so many other people who are attending or who may possibly even in the future watching. So, if you would emotionally react in here as well, we can have a look at redefining the word unpredictable, the unpredictable moments, where usually one would want to go into the emotions of fear or stress or anxiety, but to just take that breath in and out, get back to reality, remember that a lot of what we do and what we use is dependent on so many other things that we do not have control of. So all you can do is take a breath, slow down, find an immediate solution, which we did right now, just logged off for a moment, got back in, fortunately, or a solution that would assist and support a few hours later or even the next day. But there's always a solution. This is also what is amazing about defining, redefining, and living words. You become so solution oriented, and here I am as well. I mean, I had a moment of, oh dear, it went off. Oh no, okay, slow down. Let's look for an immediate solution, and found one. That's fantastic. And I'm very grateful for that, and for all of you as well, because, I mean, look at this moment. I mean, here I am being able to utilize this moment as an example in this very process that we're walking. So, hey, maybe it was specific. Instead of what so many of us tend to do, we tend to become emotional, so reactive, all over the place, give up, and just almost want to throw in the towel, So I've been very, very grateful for this process of defining, redefining, and living words, right? So I'll definitely place such as these on the list for everyone. But to round off this hangout with regards to redefining words. So before we continue with the next hangout, in the next hangout, I'm going to cover various words to assist and support within this process of redefining words, because the redefining words may take some time to kind of get to know, because it's something that's never been done before. And here I'll assist and support with the practical process, the very simple process that I myself walked in redefining the word trust, self-trust for myself, first and foremost. Getting back to asking myself the question, but how on earth throughout all my life could I have trusted other people first before even understanding what the word trust or self-trust means to me? And then it was even interesting from that when still to this day, it's never been about trusting others as much as it has been about always trusting myself and assisting and supporting other people to understand what it means to trust themselves, to develop self-trust within them, so that myself and the other person or people, we come together, and we come together in that unity of knowing that we trust ourselves. And that, to me, has become the true definition of trust in this world. So let's start from the beginning. Let's go to the simple basics. What I would like everyone to do for this hangout is to have a look at defining one thing, either in relation to your own thoughts or emotions or the things that you do in your everyday life, that you can say, I trust that. Now, this is also a little bit tricky because it can't be something like waking up in the mornings or going to bed, because we honestly never know if we're really actually going to wake up the next morning, or if we're even going to make it through a day. We really always only have one day to live, to make the most of it, to make the most of ourselves. And what I mean by the most of it is, not going to the extreme of, oh my goodness, I don't know how long I have to live, so I'm just going to mess around and do the most and make the most out of this life. No. What I mean by make the most of, and this is my definition of making the most of, is being the best that I can be for me and for the people in my life and for my purpose, the process that I'm walking. For so many others in this world. I've in all my years of being who I am and doing what I do, I have seen how a moment's conversation in a day, just 5 minutes, supported a person to make a decision in their life that took them into a journey that was extraordinary. Meaning, we ourselves sometimes just have a normal conversation with a person and support them and guide them and direct them, share some insights, but we never realize how much even those few minutes can impact another person. And this is what I've dedicated myself to do. This is who I am. Every single day, for a moment, for a couple of minutes, at least, spend some time with myself, with another person, in a way where I can make a difference. Because that ripples, it has a ripple effect, not only in your life, but that of another person. That ripple effect can touch that person, and then they influence others, and the others influence others, and so forth. So here, to have a look at your everyday life and have a look at how you can redefine the word trust in a way where, from this Tuesday hangout to the next, like everyone to take the next 7 days. And just before I finish up, the questions bar is available for anyone who is listening and who has any questions. Feel free to ask. So for the next 7 days, maybe even tonight or this afternoon or morning, whichever time zone you're in, listening to this, and even if you're listening to this hangout in a video, to write down what one thing, and I'm only asking one thing to practice for 7 days, to practice living that one thing in a definition of trust. What does trust mean? What does trust mean to you? It's just the word, the feel, the experience. I mean, to give you some guidance, to me, it's been something that is constant, continuous, reliable, dependable, in a way where it is something that you do or eventually do so constantly and consistently, day in and day out, that it is natural and that affects you, but also others as well. Meaning, where I started in my redefinition and living of the word trust was to, and I started it simply just with my relationship with myself, where I define trust in being able to take a breath and calm myself as much as possible before I went into a negative emotional state. Maybe that's something that everyone here can relate to. You know, we all have our moments in our day where we become so rallied up with our emotions, our negative experiences inside ourselves. So what I started practicing first and foremost is taking a breath and calming down. And instead of speaking or acting in a moment within those emotions, I would take a breath, slow down, calm down, and rather approach the moment or the person with clarity, with common sense, with reasoning, right? And I walked that and I practiced that for quite some time. I mean, it took me quite a while to get to a very nice, stable, reliable, trustworthy, self-trustworthy point when it came to that. And, you know, even within and throughout my life and my process, I still face moments where it kind of knocked me over and I didn't get to breathe and calm myself and slow myself down. But overall, about, I would say, 97% of the time, I managed to breathe, slow down, calm myself down. So let's maybe start here. Start with something of a redefinition of trust in your relationship with your own inner experiences, your own thoughts, your own emotions. Starting with something that you're familiar with, that you know you tend to go into an emotional reaction, a negative experience. To develop a redefinition of trust where you know that you can trust yourself, that you can, in those moments, take a breath, slow down, calm down, and instead of speaking and acting in those emotions, you speak with more clarity, common sense, and reasoning, as well as stability. All right. So everyone, this hangout here for this evening, more of a foundation, a framework, a reference of everything that is ahead. I do know that there may be some context or definitions and experiences that I mentioned that you may not understand, but even if you, this hangout may have a bit of an emotional experience or a movement of, I don't understand, I don't get it, I don't know what to do. There you have your first moment of an emotional reaction that you can breathe, let go, calm down, and instead look at the video, the information, the support with more clarity, stability, common sense, and reasoning. All right. So much more ahead in Hangouts and videos to come, where I'll guide you through giving you my story of what events followed in my life, in my process through defining, purifying, and redefining the word trust and self-trust. But within there and Hangout thus far, got more than enough to understand what is ahead, but also at the same time to challenge you. And this is also something that I will give to you within these Hangouts and videos. I'll give you challenges. It's the only way we learn how to grow, to develop, to expand. If we push ourselves to understand, if we push ourselves to do that little bit more. All right, so always in the first Hangouts or videos, when I introduce new concepts or examples, I won't give you all the answers. Come on, push yourself, challenge yourself. See within the suggestion that I've given you, if you can walk a couple of days developing the trust within you that you know when your emotions or negative experiences come up, that you'll take that breath, calm down, and slow down, and instead look at the moment, the conversation, or the other person with more stability, calm, and clarity. All right, everyone, thank you very much for joining this hangout, this momentary interrupted hangout. I appreciate it a lot. Also fantastic when these unexpected, unpredictable, sudden moments happen, where I'll include this as well, as I said, definitely in hangouts to come, about what to do and how to handle the unpredictable, the unexpected, and the sudden. I mean, here as well, I mean, it was also a very good example of where I even utilized this definition of trust that you'll be practicing right now for the next couple of days. Take a deep breath, calm down. First, ask myself, okay, what's the immediate solution? And got some people involved, asked some questions, got back in, and here we are. And if I didn't have an immediate solution, I know that I would have come up with a secondary solution. All right, so very good hangout. Thanks everyone for joining. It was an awesome, awesome moment, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.